everyone. Welcome to a Cherry on Top's YouTube channel. Sarah with you today. I am going to take you through a beautiful little peekaboo card. This is easy and simple and something anyone can do. So I thought I would share that with you today. I'm going to go through my products and what I'm going to use. So I have two of the stamp sets that are currently available in the shop. One of them is this Wild Whisper script stamp. As you can tell, this is a favorite. It's all inky and we're going to use it today. I'm going to show you kind of like a different way to use it. And whether you are a scrapbooker or a card maker, there are tips, tricks, techniques, things in this video that will help you, that will give you ideas and inspiration. So stick with me. This second card stamp set I'm going to use that is in the shop is this Altenew stamp set called Ethereal Roses. This might be one of my absolute favorite layering stamps from Altenew. And I'm going to go through and take you through layering up some of the flowers and some of the leaves and how that works, and give you some tips and some tricks along the way with that. The other thing that you need for this particular card is some white cardstock. This is a Basil Coconut Swirl cardstock. This is a cardstock from the shop that I use all the time. It's fabulous. I have one full sheet and one scrap piece. We need some circle cutters. Whether you have some older creative memories, circle cutters, whether you have some large circle punches. I'm going to just use this nesting circle die set from my stash. Doesn't matter, however you make circles, just grab your circle cutter, whatever your favorite way of doing that is. And then the other thing I'm going to use is some of this. This is a well-loved paper pad. I've already made one whole mini album with it, but I haven't finished it off yet, so I thought I would pull it out because I'm only going to need a little bit of it. This is Prima's Peach Tea collection, and this collection is still available in the shop as well, so I thought I would pull it out and get another project in using this fun paper pad. And there are some of the little embellishments in here too that I might dip into. Okay, so the last thing we're going to need are inks. When you're working with layered stamps, you need lots of ink colors. So I have quite a few here. I'm going to go ahead and go through them really quick. I used swatches and color matched all my inks, so I know that these inks are going to match this line perfectly. I have Clay Mask, Do-Si-Do, Coral Cabana, and Polished, and those are going to make our flowers. So we have a light to a dark, and then the leaves only have 2 layers. So for those 2 layers, I have Hot Tub and Skylight. I'm going to start my card making process by cutting all my paper. So I'm going to cut my card base, which is going to be a top folding card that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I cut a sheet of white cardstock to 4 1/4 by 11. I'm going to take my Teflon bone folder and go ahead and just give it a nice crease. I make cards very similarly to how I cook. I want to get my mise en place all together. So I'm going to start by cutting all of my papers. I'm going to do a card base, and then I'm also going to choose a patterned paper from that 6x6 paper pad. I'm going to cut that paper to 4 by 5 1/4. Next, I'm going to do all of my stamping. So I have my stamping platform here. I'm going to start with that script stamp from Wild Whisper. I have a piece of cardstock here that measures about 6 by 8. So it's going to hold that entire stamp. And I'm going to stamp it using the Polished ink color, getting that nice and into my stamp positioning tool. And then I'm going to go ahead, take the Polished ink, and I'm going to stamp it. I also tend to use a
little pressure tool on my stamp to keep them, to get a nice, crisp, clean impression, especially when you're using a larger stamp like this. If you are not a card maker, guess what? You just made a sheet of 6x6 pattern paper that you can use for anything. This is why I love these stamps from Wild Whisper. You can stamp this in any color and you will get a lovely sheet of 6x6 pattern paper with that gorgeous script background or design on it. I've chosen 3 stamps from the Ethereal Roses stamp set that I want to stamp, and I'm going to stamp each of these images twice. Layering stamps are so fun. They give you amazing depth and dimension. Altenews come with a really easy to follow stamping guide. So I'm starting with my lightest color of stamp, lightest color of ink, working up to my darkest color of ink. And then you stamp starting with the first image and then building up to the last image. While I go ahead and stamp these flowers, I'm going to give you my very best stamping tips and tricks. I just showed you there the Altenew, the insert that comes in Altenew stamp sets that show you how to layer these up. First, when it comes to layered stamp sets, practice, 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 practice. I can't say this enough. When you get a new layered stamp set, grab some scratch paper and practice. Look at your stamp sets. Look at how they layer up. I know that the back of the inserts always have like guides that you can follow. I generally find my own guides that work for me. I don't always follow the guides that are in the insert. The insert is a great resource. Definitely take a look at that. Definitely practice, 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 and work with your stamps. Sometimes you might find that for your eye, there's a spot for you to use to line up. The other thing is go slow. Don't rush it. Don't rush lining the stamps up. Don't rush stamping them. For example, you will notice that when I ink each of these layers up and put them down on the stamp, I don't immediately pull them back up. I give them a good rub. I make sure that my stamp is contacting my paper and I'm giving it a beat or two to allow that ink to get onto the paper. Another thing I would definitely recommend when it comes to stamping with layered stamps or any kind of stamp is know your inks. Know what your inks do. I am working with Catherine Pooler dye inks, and I know that those inks dry back. So right now, my flowers kind of look like big blobs. That's okay, because I am still working with layers and layers of wet ink. And as each of those separate colors that I have stamped dry, they're going to dry back. They're going to dry lighter. And all of that beautiful detail that I am stamping is not going to be immediately visible. The ink needs time to soak into the paper. The ink needs time to dry down to its actual color. And so if you're looking at your inks and you're not liking the contrast, or in this case, my flowers look a little bit like big blobs, and you are using a dye ink, give it a heartbeat. Let it dry back, and you will find that you will probably like the results, and that in fact you can see all of the different layers and colors. If you find that you don't have enough inks in a family of colors, for example, the large rose that I stamped needed 5 colors. I only had 4. So what I did was that last color, the last layer, I stamped it twice, which will give me a deeper darker color than just stamping it once. Another thing you can do is if you don't have the lighter color that you need, take one of your colors and stamp it maybe even 2 or 3 times and take a look at that second generation stamping, because that might give you the color that you need. The leaves in this stamp set are really simple and only have 2 layers. I wasn't happy with that one first leaf I stamped. It kind of had a blotchy look to it, so I just restamped it up above and continued on. For my greens, I'm doing Hot Tub and Skylight. If you, again, if you have never used Catherine Pooler inks, I always recommend swatching them, because the color that is on the top of the ink is not the color you're going to get. And so for the best, most accurate stamping, to know exactly what color you're going to get when you use these inks, I would definitely go ahead and just make yourself some swatches so you have them. They come in handy so much. Now let's put this little peekaboo card all together. I'm going to take my circle die and I'm going to start by die cutting a circle out of my patterned paper panel. I'm going to use some washi tape to secure my die and then run it through my die cutting machine. I would not always recommend using washi tape. I would much rather be using Sizzix Maker's tape, but I currently actually the day I filmed this, my Maker's tape was out for delivery, just hadn't arrived yet. So if you use washi to hold your die down, just be very, very careful. Okay, next layer. I'm going to go ahead and adhere my panel to the front of the card base. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab that same circle die, the one that I just used for the pattern paper. And I'm going to kind of fit it down back into place and adhere it down again and put it through my die cutting machine again. And this time it will cut a hole into my card base. Now we have one more circle to cut, and this one is going to be the circle we're going to cut out of that script background pattern paper that we stamped. Same exact die that I've used for all 3 of these circles. Now let's put this part of our card together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take that circle with the script and I'm going to pop it right down into that hole that we made in our card front. Now, our peekaboo card's pretty much done. If you want to stamp a sentiment, you're going to stamp your sentiment into the middle of that script background, maybe with some really dark green cardstock or some black. I am going to leave this particular card open because I don't have a recipient in mind, and that way I can add whatever sentiment I want before I ship it out. I used the coordinating dies to cut all of my stamped flowers, and now I'm putting together a little cluster. So each cluster of the flowers is going to look the same. One is going to go on the outside of my card. You can kind of see me here getting those flowers together. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off screen. I did not intend for that to happen. And I'm going to put it along the bottom corner right there. So we have one of our floral arrangements ready to go, just taking off a little bit of adhesive that I accidentally got onto the back. Now, this is why I stamped 2 of each of my images and die cut 2 of each of my images, because I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to recreate the same cluster that's on the front. I'm going to recreate another one. You're going to see me kind of line it all up so it's exactly the same as the one on the front. I'm going to put those die cuts exactly in the same spot. And then once I have them in exactly the same spot, I'm going to go ahead and put some adhesive on the back. Now I'm going to tuck it up under and line them all up again, lining both of those flowers up, push down, and ta-da! Now we have that flower on the outside and on the inside of our card. For the front of the card, I can add a little bit more detail, so I'm going to do that with some die cuts and one of those cute little puffy stickers and some sequins for just a bit of pizzazz. And that's where we're going to call this card all done. Thank you so very much for joining me today. I hope you've learned some tips and some tricks that can help you next time you want to play with some layering stamps. Have a wonderful, wonderful Technique Tuesday, everybody, and I'll see you again next month. Bye.